et tu, Brute? Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Leandra, the TBR Zero, and my goal is to listen to my physical TBR one book at a time. This is the second episode for Meet the Booktuber Through Books, and my next guest, virtual guest, is Brittany over at Brittany Loves Reading, as the dramatic introduction suggests, as well as this very flashy blazer that I rarely wear. One of the 3 books that Brittany recommended to me does fit under dark academia, but I'm getting ahead of myself. For those of you who have no idea what this series is about, it's called Meet the Booktubers Through Books, and as it suggests, I'm going to be reading 3 books recommended to me from 3 different genres or subgenres from a certain booktuber to help you get to know them better. Oftentimes, we have booktubers who are known for 1 or 2 genres that they know in depth, but all of us have a much deeper repertoire than what our channels suggest. We all tend to read everything, and I really wanted this series to highlight that and really encourage people to go outside of their comfort zone, expand their booktube community, and meet new friends, meet new booktubers. And this time around, I'm introducing you to Brittany. If you are interested in seeing episode 1 featuring Danny from Danny Dabbles, and I did everything cozy, I highly recommend that you check her out. It was a really fun episode to do. But back to the booktuber at hand. Brittany is probably one of my closest friends on BookTube. I only met her a year ago, but we've gotten to know each other in such rapid fashion, and she's just the loveliest person. She hosts sprints on her channel, and she often highlights new booktubers all the time to join her, which is honestly so kind of her. She helps them get used to the sprinting process before they go off on their own. She also has a few staple videos on her channel, including Timmy's TBR. As someone from upstate New York who also adores Tim Hortons, and I'm sad that it's not in my current area, I really love that she highlights that because she's from Canada, and I don't know, as a Northern American, I can also appreciate the fact that Tim Hortons is an elite coffee brand. She also participates in so many readathons. She has her own book club with Kelsey from Reads with Kelsey. It's called the B&K Book Club, and so they are just such a huge part, an active part in this community, that it's really lovely to see, and you really should go support Brittany in all the ways that you can. Now, the 3 books that Brittany has recommended to me do highlight what she is best known for. With that said, she is getting into other genres this year. For instance, she's really getting into sci-fi. She's trying to read more manga and graphic novels, and those aren't featured in these 3 books. So just to know that she really does have a huge depth of reading. She's a big romance reader all of a sudden too in the last couple years. So I want to make sure that you know that these 3 books are probably a bit more similar as far as their kind of darkness, but there's so much more going on. I am getting ahead of myself. So the first book I'm going to talk about is ML Rio's If We Were Villains. Now, this kind of was the spark for a much bigger project going on beyond this one video that I'm doing. There are a bunch of other booktubers who are reading that, along with a few other titles recommended by Brittany in honor of her birthday, because February is her birthday month, and we want to celebrate her because she's amazing. So this one highlights one of the things that she's really known for, and that's dark academia. She's a huge academia fan, and so all of us wanted to read that. And I'm especially looking forward to it because last year, as I was finishing my master's in humanities, one of the classes I was taking was on Shakespeare. It focused on the histories and the comedies, but I am looking forward to seeing the various kind of nods, some hints. Am I going to recognize some references? Because it follows these 7 students who are all friends at their university, at their program. They're all actors, and they're all participating in various Shakespearean plays. And apparently there's also a bit of mystery and thriller going on. Maybe there's a death. Maybe they're trying to figure out who was murdered, why they were murdered. It's definitely giving me A Secret History by Donna Tartt vibes. And that's all I really know about it. The second book that I'll be reading is Inkblood Sister Scribe by Emma Torres. As you can see, I actually do own this book, which is exciting, so I'll be taking it off of my physical TBR. Now, this one is labeled an urban fantasy / magical realism, so I don't really know how well it toes the line between those 2 very different genres. I am also looking forward to the familial elements. Apparently it follows a few sisters, 3 of them. That's a few, and I don't really know much more about that either. I'm trying to go into all these blind, as you can see, because I really want my reactions to be as authentic as possible. And then finally, the third book that was recommended to me is also something that a lot of us friends of Brittany associate with her, and that is a fairy tale retelling. It is For the Wolf by Hannah Witten. It's also labeled under Goodreads, which we don't know if we can really trust cast it as a romantasy, and I don't think I've ever genuinely read a romantasy before, so that'll be outside of my comfort zone, even though I do love fairy tale retellings. So we're gonna see which way I lean as far as reading those books, but I just want to emphasize that no matter what I think about these 3 books, this whole video is genuinely dedicated to Brittany because we all love her so much. So please, please, please go support her. She's amazing. I am really looking forward to this. And as I said, I think I'm going to start with If We Were Villains, and I do have the audiobook, so wish me luck. I also forgot to mention that Brittany and I do Ice Planet Barbarian sprints every other month, and to date, we have read 11 of those books together. So, I mean, our friendship goes deep in some very weird ways as well. Anyway, that's all I had to say. On this strangely rainy January day, I am 40% of the way through our first book for the vlog, and that is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio. I don't think I mentioned this in my intro, but this is my first experience with this author. I've never read anything by them before, and I am not sure how I feel about it. I can definitely tell you I understand why some people adore it and why others are just not fans, and it's because this book is probably the most dark academia book I've ever read in my life, and I've read The Secret History by Donna Tartt, and that is as dark and academic as it can get. What's really fascinating about this is that you can tell M.L. Rio is very much leading upon her expertise. I know that she has degrees in Shakespearean literature. I don't know if it's a theater or not. I should have checked before the vlog, but here we are. And she's just flooding you with knowledge. And if you're a huge Shakespearean fan, a huge fan of the theater, then you can really appreciate what she's doing and how much work she's put into the narrative. The fact that it's also written in play format, that is fascinating. I will say that a hindrance is that I only have access to the audiobook, and that is not the author's fault. This book deserves to be read physically, I think. I just didn't have access to the physical copy, and the ebook has a much longer hold for obvious reasons compared to the audio, and so this is what we have. I think it could have been better if there were more than one narrator as far as voice actors go. Because it is told in first person, it makes sense that they would only hire one voice narrator, but because it's play format, it is kind of losing something, the fact that he is giving voice to everyone, and it's a huge cast of characters, to be expected because Shakespeare wasn't known for having a small cast of characters. So there are 7 students who are part of this elite theater program, and every single year people get cut from the program, and so this group have kind of fortified themselves for a bit of survival purposes, and I would argue that they're really not friends. They are kind of like enemies. They are really snarky towards each other, and yet they just find themselves gravitating towards each other like moths to a flame. And most of them are archetypes themselves. They perform all the time. I think that's one thing that you can say is really fascinating, is that yes, they perform on stage and we watch them perform certain plays, but they also seem to be very performative in their relationships, their friendships, and yeah, they're romantic partners. So for instance, one couple that is super unhealthy and makes me uncomfortable, and well, I guess their romance is over, and we'll get to that because something really dramatic happened, which no relationship can come back from, let me just tell you that. That couple is Meredith and Richard. They are just as archetypal as you can get. Meredith is kind of the femme fatale, it seems, almost. She's very over-sexualized and she utilizes it. She's very comfortable with her body, which is great, but you can tell that no one really trusts her, and I don't trust her, if I'm gonna be honest. She is, at the beginning of the book, coupled with Richard, who is kind of the star of the show. He always gets the leads. He's this really like deep-voiced man who is really confident in himself, and their relationship kind of falls apart in the first 40% of the book, mainly because he suddenly gets really volatile. That's one thing I will say that I am confused about. I don't understand why he's suddenly genuinely violent. He is throwing out insults, he's aggressive. He almost drowned one of their friends, James, while they were partying and having a great time after a successful show, and that just threw me for a loop. I'm like, why is he like this? And now, after that event, no one really discussed it afterwards. His relationship with Meredith just continues to deteriorate, and he is purposely trying to harm people on stage while they're performing in a way that the audience can't tell, and he's leaving bruises on people. He's shoving them extremely hard to the point where they could get hurt, and it's just this, I'm really confused, and everyone's like, oh man, he's a tyrant, and I'm like, but why? Like, why is no one asking why he suddenly has anger issues and why he's being really like scary? So that, I will say, I don't think ML Rio explained that really well, and if she did, I would argue that the audio prevents me from really telling and understanding that, because maybe it's a format thing and I would have been able to see the progression a bit better on the page. So our narrator though is Oliver, and I am fascinated by him, mainly because of the narrative style we are taking with his POV. It's first person, and he is described as this normal boy. He is the classic outsider character, the secondary character as narrator. We do see that in The Secret History with Donna Tartt, and we also see that in The Great Gatsby. So if you haven't read Donna Tartt, but you have read the classic by F. Scott Fitzgerald, then you know what I'm talking about. It's an outsider who's been let into the fold. A lot of times it's a financial reason why they're outsiders. They are just not as affluent, or they don't have the same connections of affluence as the other characters do. That was the case for Nate in The Great Gatsby and for the main character in The Secret History. And I would say Oliver isn't as financially well off. His parents are paying for his education, and a bit grudgingly, but he's just kind of this aloof, bopping around boy. Like, no one remembers him. Oftentimes he is kind of forgotten when they're casting and they're like, oh, that's right, we need to cast him, which I do kind of find funny, and it's not meant to be. And then there's also his like weird romantic relationship, like a tension going on between him and Meredith, which, you know, is again not healthy, especially with Richard being so violent. I will say there's this one scene at a party when he and Meredith are together. They're alone in a room and they're getting it on, for lack of any other phrase, and Richard is pounding on the door. Their other friends are trying to pull him away, and they just keep going, and I'm like, this isn't normal. This isn't what normal people do, I don't think. So it's very dramatic, which is also very Shakespearean. So I mean, ML Rio's got that going for him. But what's happened so far at the 40% mark around that, because I did read a little bit further, is that Richard is discovered dead or dying in the lake, and all of his friends, supposed friends, because of everything that's going on, watch him die, basically. They do not help him, and now we are proceeding to see all of these events take place of what's going on. The dysfunctional nature of their friend group just continues to just be witnessed and get worse. And you start to get really concerned for Oliver, because there is a double perspective where we're seeing him in the present reflecting upon these past events, and we're kind of switching back and forth, and you kind of know that he got into some serious trouble based on the present events, but you're just now trying to figure out how that happened. So it's more of a whodunit, semi a whodunit, because we still don't really know who murdered Richard, but there's an assumption that he was murdered. And yeah, so I am definitely into like the mystery thriller elements of this. I don't know how I feel. We're gonna have to see as the book progresses. There's a lot of the book to go, but I can 100% tell you, if you're a dark academia person, like, there's no way that you wouldn't enjoy this book, because it is written all over the page. I just don't know if I am, because it's been a few years since I've read a dark academia narrative, and I don't know if I'm the type of person who enjoys it anymore, but I'm intrigued. So yeah, this is a long update because I had a lot to talk about. I guess that's a good sign. Because there's a lot to unpack with this book, and I do enjoy talking about it. What a weird experience. Anyway, going to continue my reading. Okay, so there was a hiccup. It's been a few days, mainly because I lost the audiobook. And by lost, I mean Libby took it from me. Literally as I was listening to it. I didn't even realize when I was due. And then I was like, oh my gosh, when am I going to finish this book? But it ended up returning to me very quickly through a different library. This is why you should have more than one library card on Libby. And I am now at like 85%. I only have about 2 hours of the audiobook left. But I do have to say that I'm a bit disappointed that the mystery element isn't as, I don't know, prominent as I hoped it would be as soon as we found out that like Richard was dead and that he clearly died in like this weird, brutal, kind of grotesque way. And yeah, it hasn't really happened. It's just been more about the drama of these characters. This is definitely a bibliodrama, and I'm all for any biblio genre, so biblio romance, biblio mystery, but this is the first time I've ever had like a dark drama that is like literary-esque, mainly because of the whole like theater backdrop and everything like that. The one element that is at this point feeling over the top for me is some of the characters' dialogue, which we're definitely leaning into, again, the kind of dramatic air of Shakespeare, so you are kind of expected to accept it. So it's not that big of a deal, but like the one Professor Gwendolyn made me so uncomfortable when she was like, we need to address like the discomfort between some of you actors, specifically James and Meredith. And just to give some context, and this isn't really spoilers because it's just part of the character dynamic, but there's something with Ren and James, and then there's something with Meredith and our main character, our narrator, Oliver. And then Gwendolyn, the professor, who's supposed to be professional, is like, there's tension between James and Meredith, and the reason why you guys can't act together is because of how much you want each other. And she says that James is mad at Meredith for just being this sex icon, and how she affects every single man because she's so sexy. And it's like, okay, be careful, Gwendolyn, you're talking about one of your students in a very inappropriate way. And then she turns to Meredith saying, meanwhile, Meredith, you want him even more because he refuses to give in to you, and so you're extremely attracted to him. And then she has them perform the scene where they like make out aggressively, and it's just like, I am so uncomfortable with this. I also at one point was wondering if there was like queer coding between James and Oliver. So like love, we're talking about a love square here at this moment in time, not even a love triangle. And there was some suggestion that there might be something going on, because like throughout the entire book I was like, are James and Oliver just a bit more than friends because they're roommates and they're just the way they kind of interact with each other? I was kind of wondering. And then there was a discussion in the present that kind of has solidified that. So maybe, I don't know if that's queer coding, if it's semi-confirmed, but the characters don't even seem to really be able to comprehend the complexity of their relationships. So yeah, I don't know how this is gonna end, because the mystery isn't really at anyone's kind of forefront. It kind of is, as far as like the reasons for why the present timeline is the way it is. And I'm not talking about the present timeline because I feel as though that could be a fun thing for people who enter this book to learn about. So I'm really only talking about the past because most of the narrative is set in the past. But yeah, I'm wondering how this is all going to end and if I'm going to feel satisfied by it, because as a mystery reader, I typically want to be able to see the clues and the different suspects, where ML Rio, for obvious reasons, hasn't focused on that because that's not really the genre that we're in. But that's all I have to say for now. I have about 2 hours left, a little less than that because I'm listening to it at a higher speed than 1 times, but we're gonna see how I feel in the end. I don't know. I hope I find it satisfying, and if I don't, then that's the tricks of the trade, isn't it? That's the chance you take every time you read a book. Either way, though, I feel like we're learning a lot about Brittany's reading experiences, which she really enjoys, and I can definitely see her appreciation of this novel, and I can see a lot of people appreciating it too, which is just, it's very fun to be in someone else's shoes, in someone else's library, if we want to say, because we're book people, and I feel like we've got to change the metaphor a bit. All right, this update's longer than I planned. There you go. I didn't like it. Oh my gosh, this is a catastrophe. I honestly would never have expected it. Brittany and I are usually so aligned with our feelings about books. There's only one series I can think of that we don't really see eye to eye in. Everything else, we've always been either exactly the same or maybe 1 star difference depending on how we were feeling, if one of us decided to lean more into the vibes while the other one didn't. So this is headline news. Not to mention the fact that this is happening in the middle of Icebreaker Gate. If you have no idea what Icebreaker Gate is, honestly, I don't know if I'm the one to tell you, but check out the Besties Book Club. You can talk to Brittany, Rainey, Neva, or Kelsey about it, and they will have so much fun telling you about it, as well as, you know, asking you for applications as far as which alliance you want to join. And that's all I'm going to say about it. To get back to If We Were Villains, I can see why so many people still really love this book, even though it frustrated me, especially as the book progressed, specifically the ending, what our narrator Oliver decides to do, the actions he takes really just made me so mad. I can also see why some people adore it because of that. If We Were Villains by ML Rio is just not my cup of tea. I think that a lot of people enjoy the drama. If you're a huge dark academia person, it makes sense that this would be for you, especially the ending. Whereas I'm someone who found the ending extremely frustrating, and that's because if we're really breaking it down here, this book is juggling 2 things: dark academia, but also mystery thriller elements. So for those who, if you had to lean one way, lean further towards dark academia, they'd adore this. But because I'm a mystery girl through and through, I'm actually really angry about the ending. I don't like the actions that our narrator Oliver decides to take upon himself and the results that come of it. The reveal of who committed the crime, of who killed Richard, was not surprising to me, but more so, yeah, the events that happened afterwards really pissed me off. And so I think that this book wasn't for me. I will admit that ML Rio is a strong writer, and she definitely has a huge amount of knowledge with Shakespeare and theater, and those people who really adore that will have so much fun with this book. But for me, I just don't think I'm that type of reader anymore. I just don't think that the book is for 2024 Leandra, if that makes sense. With that said, I've got 2 more books to read for this vlog, and I'm really crossing my fingers. I don't know which one I'm gonna pick up. I might end up seeing which book I have got to return to the library sooner. I do own Inkblood Sister Scribe, but I also got the audiobook, which I'm really excited to immersive read. So we're gonna see what happens. You're gonna find out which book I choose to read next in the next update. Welcome to an up-close spoiler chit-chat where I explain with some more context as to why If We Were Villains just didn't sit well with me. I am moving it into a spoiler section because I don't want it to affect anyone else's reading who really wants to read the book and hasn't, but I do want to talk about it for those who have read the book and just need to hear more, whether you enjoyed the book yourself or didn't. Now, there should be a spoiler on the screen, and this is kind of your last warning to move ahead in the vlog to see what my thoughts were on the other 2 books Brittany recommended to me so that this one doesn't get spoiled for you. Okay, I think everyone's gone who should be gone. Now, with If We Were Villains, we discover that James is the killer. He killed Richard in what seems to be an act of self-defense due to, obviously, the volatile, harmful actions that were being done by Richard and the potential of him killing someone while he was under the influence. Now, we never really get a reason for why Richard's personality changed, like, so drastically, and there's 2 things for that. I will admit, because I'm listening to the audiobook, or I was listening to the audiobook, that maybe it went by very quickly, but in that case, why weren't people harping on it more? Because that's really weird that after being friends with someone for 3 years, he's suddenly almost killing people? That doesn't make any sense. Or maybe he's been like this forever, but he just has been lucky and not killed anyone. Like, it didn't make sense to me. So I was really confused by that. But understandably, in the circumstances that James lays out, he defends himself, defends others, and kills Richard in the process. Now, Oliver, our narrator, ends up discovering the murder weapon, puts 2 and 2 together. The police are on their way. to a performance to arrest someone. And we learn that they're going to arrest James, but Oliver steps up and says, I did it. I'm the killer. And it's like, oh, Jesus. Okay, so we have a very interesting reveal that in the end, the reason why Oliver was imprisoned, did his time and is now out in the world, is because he decided to take the rap for James. How dumb can you be? Honestly, I have to say, throughout the entire book, we are told time and time again that Oliver is oblivious and naive and the dumbest of the group, and this proved it. Are you serious, Oliver? Really? Because the thing is, oh my gosh, the thing is, I could have been on board for Oliver being the one who ended up taking all the blame if it was spun a different way. That he didn't weirdly confess to protect James because they have a weird romantic brotherly friendship. That's very Shakespearean, I get it. But I, throughout the entire time, was thinking, oh, he was either framed, falsely accused, ended up just having the police not sure what to do, and so they arrested him, and really it was one of his other friends who did it. I would have been fine if James was the killer, but that because he was mixed up in this world, Oliver gets the blame for it, whether his friends meant for that to happen or not. But the fact that he put himself out there and was like, yes, I want to ruin my life, I want to go to jail, that doesn't make any sense. And the fact that he's like, Shakespeare helped me survive prison, it's like, okay, geez, you're such a mess in so many ways. On top of the fact that it did nothing, because him protecting his friend James, it doesn't help, because James is riddled with guilt, ends up dying in the end anyway, in a very brutal way of taking his own life, which mirrors Richard's own death. And it's just, really, ML Rio? Really? I find that almost laughable. And for me, as someone who really enjoys well-plotted mysteries, it frustrated me how messy it was in the end. And I wasn't really into it. So, for those of you who absolutely adore ML Rio, I hope that it makes sense why I wasn't a fan, but I can understand those who just love the drama, the dark drama that comes with dark academia, because I could see this being a ride of you just being like, these characters are all dysfunctional, they all always make the wrong decision, and we're just here to watch the train wreck and cause an explosion of fire and flames and just doom for all. We're here for it. For me, no, I was not here for it. So there's that. Also, why did everyone only ever quote Shakespeare? I get that that was mainly the writer, the playwright that they were following, but as actors, as, theater fans, avid, performers, wouldn't they be throwing in other quotes? Throw in an Oscar Wilde, George Bernard Shaw, Noel Coward, Edward Albee even, a more modern kind of absurdist writer. I just didn't really understand why they were only doing it. And the only explanation I can have is that ML Rio is an expert in Shakespearean lit, and so that's why she only had them doing that. But it's even during the time period of Shakespeare, there were a bunch of other playwrights that were successful and well known. So weird. Oh, Oliver, you idiot. I am halfway through Inkblood Sister Scribe, and I'm really enjoying it so far. I have been immersive reading it, so I can recommend the voice narrator. I think she does an excellent job. She has a really good tone that blends well with the narrative style. She's providing a bunch of accents because we are dealing with characters from all across the world, which is very exciting, and I didn't realize that that was a thing. If that's in the synopsis, then I do apologize, amateurs, because I really didn't read it. But I am having a great time, which is also such a relief, because I did check in with Brittany about if we were villains, and she knows that I appreciate the writing style, the knowledge that Rio brings to the narrative, the fact that Richard is probably an homage to the ghost of Hamlet's father, all of that jazz. So I can appreciate it, but she also told me that she didn't really think that it was going to be a narrative for me anyway, because it's the staple for our vlogging project. All of us are reading If We Were Villains if we hadn't read it previously. It's not a book for everyone. So in reality, the two other books I'm reading for this vlog, Inkblood, Sister Scribe, and For the Wolf, were the ones that she did choose specifically for me. So it makes sense that If We Were Villains just wasn't my cup of tea, and I also have it on good authority that other people in this project have already really thoroughly loved it. So I'm so happy to know about that, and I'm sure you might already know depending on what order you're watching this playlist in. But back to Inkblood, Sister Scribe. I am having a great time. I've already mentioned that, and it's mainly because I'm appreciating the thoughtful themes of loneliness. That sounds very weird and might not be something that you immediately think of when you're talking about Inkblood, Sister Scribe, but it follows three main characters, and all of them have had their lives controlled by these magic books. They are spell books that are only made out of creation because of specific people's blood that have magic in them, and they're very rare, so that means they're very coveted. Dangerous people want them for their own selfish gains. And these three characters, Esther and Joanna, sisters, and then a bit of an outlier, Nicholas, have all been forced to be isolated in different ways, whether they are sequestered and almost as if they've been created their own little prison within their homes, or sent off into the world to never really make any serious connections. This is the case for Joanna and Esther. Joanna, having the ability to sense magic, to hear it hum, she has kind of inherited her father's take on what they should do, and that's protect the books that they own. So she has really closed herself off from the world. She has lived in her childhood homestead forever. She didn't go to college. She hasn't left her hometown, mainly because she can't leave the premises for too long, because every 24 hours she has to reset the wards that protects the location and prevents people from being able to find her home. Meanwhile, her sister Esther is completely opposite to her, both in personality and abilities. Esther cannot do anything with magic, actually. She can pick up the book, she can read the spells, she can't hear them, and also wards don't affect her. So she can easily return to her childhood home whenever, and that actually makes her dangerous, because if people get her, they can maybe force her to take them to those books, to steal them, to harm her family. And so that's why her father told her long ago that she had the choice, either to keep her family in harm's way, or she's got to travel and only stay in one place for a year. And then on that anniversary, that November 5th, which I don't fully understand what that's about just yet, but I'm sure it'll be revealed to us, she's got to leave, because basically someone can track her, find her, and so she's got to travel for 24 hours in a row to be sure that no one finds her. But this time around, she decides that she's done running. She's found someone that she really loves. She's living in an Antarctic station, so she thinks she's very far away from any type of trouble. And so on the anniversary, she decides to just stay. And immediately, almost, she discovers blood magic being used on the station, and so she knows she's been found. She just doesn't know who she can trust. So that's going on with her narrative. Meanwhile, we have Nicholas that I mentioned, and he is a scribe. He lives and basically breathes. His entire home is the library, which has like thousands upon thousands of magic books, and the magic runs in his veins. And so he writes magic with the blood as ink mixed with herbs and other things to strengthen them. And he's a really hot commodity, I suppose, because there's this, assumption that he's the only living scribe. And that means that his blood is very much wanted by everyone. And so he's got to be protected. But also, in a bit of a selfish way, my understanding is that Richard, his uncle, isn't a good guy, that he is using his nephew for his own needs, and more things are being revealed. Like, Nicholas just discovered something really crazy within the library itself, something that he should have kind of been aware of, and now he's like, oh my gosh, this changes everything. It changes my relationship with my uncle. And past events that happened to him in moments when he was in danger, he's beginning to kind of re-look at those and be like, was I told this, and is it even true? What's going on? So I'm really intrigued. And yeah, all three of these characters just are lonely. They're either missing their family, they feel as though they can't make any type of connections with a companion or a lover. And then Nicholas, he just wants a friend, because all the friends he has have pretty much been paid to guard him, to teach him, mentor him, and he doesn't really know what life outside of the library is like. I'm just intrigued to see what happens. I know that all three of these characters are probably going to align at some point, and it's going to be a good time. But if you're interested, if that sounds good to you, then this is probably a book up your alley. And I'm not surprised, because of course Brittany would not stray me wrong as far as like magical books are concerned, because she's a bit of an expert in that. Okay, I finished Inkblood Sister Scribe a few days ago. Let me actually grab the book. And it is obviously very easily my favorite book of the vlog so far. I really enjoyed it. This is probably one of my few experiences with urban fantasy, and I have mixed feelings about what I guess would be deemed the urban part of it, but I did like the magical system. The blood magic was really fascinating. The books, the library, of course, I'm gonna thoroughly enjoy that. And I found the characters really compelling. I was intrigued by Esther and Joanna. Nicholas was really fascinating to me too. I will say that some of the characters' interactions, as they started blending together, because the characters are having separate POVs in separate areas of the world. And of course, unsurprisingly, events take place that force them together, and together they're stronger, they have more knowledge, they've got more power, and they can kind of figure out what's going on. And because there's like a greater arcing conflict, of course, going on with all of them, and they're all being impacted. All of their lives have been heavily impacted and decided for them because of this. So I did like that, but when they finally came together, it did feel a little bit weird. Almost a bit too modern. Like the dialogue seemed a bit kind of weird. Maybe they were too buddy casual together. I don't know. I wasn't as intrigued by them when they finally came together. I thought I'd be intrigued when Collins and Joanna started having like ooh, are they? What's going on here? And then there was a moment where I almost felt too juvenile, and I was kind of like, ooh, this is a bit cringy. I don't know if I want you together. And then Collins was having some weird behaviors by the end that I don't know, I didn't really understand his character. It seemed a bit of a hodgepodge kind of design for him. I didn't fully understand or feel, I suppose, like I believed that he was who he was. I don't know how else to explain that. So with that said, as far as the entire narrative goes, I did have a good time. I enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I would definitely try Emma Torres again, so that's a boon. Brittany's tastes totally align with this. I can totally see it. Not only is it because it's fantasy, but the elements of the library, of the books, of the magic, and how it is tied together with family, with community. I could totally see why Brittany loves it. Also, the writing is very beautiful. I believe Emma Torres is also a trained writer. She got her MFA, I think from the University of Montana. I could be wrong. All right, I only have one more book for this vlog, and I personally think it's going to be my favorite. I know that Brittany thought this one was going to be my favorite of the three, but I'm getting good vibes for the Wolf. I think it's the fairy tale-esque. I think it's the fact that it's, you know, a Little Red Riding Hood retelling, I'm imagining. And I mean, I really love those. The only one that comes to mind, admittedly, is Hoodwinked, which is honestly a film masterpiece, but I know it's not going to be that vibe. Before I send you off into the future that is still going to be my past and your past once you see it, I also want to let you know that there's a bit of a bonus book, unintentionally. I am reading Godkiller with Brittany herself. It's honestly a very impromptu buddy read. We are doing it for Battle of the Girl Bands, which is hosted by Rainy from Rainy Blue Reads. Even though Brittany and I are on separate teams, because we are hoping to read as many host favorites as possible, it seems as though she and I requested it a while ago, got it, and then just haven't read it. But both of us have our reserves coming to a close. Hers is due in a couple days, so is mine. And when she mentioned it on Sprints and I mentioned it on Sprints, she was like, wait, should we just read this together and like encourage each other? And I was like, okay, that sounds good. So we're reading it very quickly in literally a matter of like 48 hours, a little bit more than that potentially. But then after that, she loses her audiobook and a day later I lose mine. So we're really rushing to do this, and we're almost halfway through it at this moment, and both of us are having such a good time. We're really appreciating the complexity of the realm, the world building, the relationship that these humans have with their gods, the wars that are involved in it, the history. It's a very short fantasy. It's, I think, less than 300 pages or somewhere around there. And I think that's why some fantasy readers haven't been that impressed. It really hasn't been that much talked about, but Brittany was saying, and I think that she has a point, that those who have talked about it have had, you know, some pretty big influence on the booktube community. They're people that a lot of people base their recommendations on. So because it wasn't their cup of tea, it seems as though this book has kind of been overlooked. But Julie from Keep Calm with Books and Coffee absolutely adored it. That's why Brittany and I are reading it, because Julie's also a co-host for this readathon, and it was her pick. And yeah, we're having a really good time. It's been really fun. Brittany and I have been talking in depth about it, sending each other voice messages, and this is the type of fantasy I think I can get behind. I'm still trying to figure out the fantasies I like, which also shows how I don't really know what lingo I'm going for. And I'm really glad that Brittany's with me as I investigate it a little bit more, because who else are you going to trust with a fantasy recommendation / buddy read? It has been a journey, but we have one more book in this vlog, and I have a lot writing on it. I am 100 pages into For the Wolf by Hannah Witten, the final book for the vlog that is dedicated to Brittany Loves Reading, because she's an amazing human, and because her birthday is today, the day that this is posted. So very exciting things. This is about a quarter of the way through, and I am worried that I miscategorized this book in a few ways when I first introduced it in the vlog, and Brittany was probably like, Leandra, what are you talking about? So I thought this was YA, but the main character is 20. A lot of the characters within this world are 20 and up, so I would actually probably categorize this as new adult if I were to, you know, do my introduction again, which I'm not going to. I also was semi-right in calling this a fairy tale retelling of Little Red Riding Hood, but Brittany was telling me that's actually a little bit more leaning towards a fairy tale retelling of Beauty and the Beast. Obviously, Little Red Riding Hood is featured. I mean, look at this cover. The characters are Red and the Wolf for one of the main love interests, but the plotting is definitely giving me Beauty and the Beast vibes, more so than it does for Little Red Riding Hood, and I'm all for it. It's actually one of my favorite fairy tales. Growing up, I loved Belle, and I've read a few Beauty and the Beast retellings since, and I've always really enjoyed them. And yeah, so I've got high hopes for this one, and I'm enjoying it so far. So with 100 pages in, we really set the lay of the land, but there's still so much to uncover. I have learned that there's a lot of tradition, history, politics, and religion all wrapped up in this world. We have two young women. They are twins. They were born into this royal family, Neve and Red. Because they're twins, you would think, oh, they're the same age, but arguably Neve is the first daughter and Red is deemed the second daughter. The first daughter is for the crown, and the second daughter is for the wolf, meaning that she is a sacrifice once she receives a mark by the time she turns 20, and then she is given up literally, genuinely as a sacrifice, never to be seen again. The expectation is that she will be taken and killed, drained. I still don't fully understand what their expectation is as far as what is going on with her, but she's sacrificed to the Wilder Wood. Within the Wilder Wood, this honestly alive forest, there is the wolf, and this tradition has been going on for centuries. It only happens periodically, and they haven't really said it out loud, but I think it's because a lot of times the royal family probably purposely tries not to give birth to a second daughter. So being twins was really out of their control. And so Red has to now perform this ritual, and no one wants her to do it. Her sister, her current lover, all want her to run away. They say, save yourself, we will figure things out, we want you to live. And Red, though, has her own motivations for why she's going to go along with it. She has had some, I guess, trauma from past experiences involving her sister Neve, and she's really worried that there's something in her that would actually bring danger to everyone, that's more dangerous if she were to stay alive in this world than to enter the wilder wood. And she kind of thinks that this is the better choice for her. So she goes along with the sacrifice, enters the wilder wood, and the descriptions are just so well done. I really enjoy how Whitten has made the woods come alive. The trees are sinister, and their desires, their attempts to take Red's life. And then also the castle, I guess it's not a castle, I don't really know how to describe it. The manor, the mansion, whatever, the ruins really, where the wolf lives, are really well described as far as like the moss and the lichen and the various flora and fauna that are living throughout this crumbled structure. But there's also this beautiful library that's a bit of a sanctuary, and Red and the wolf do not honestly get along very well at the beginning. They still aren't getting along, but I think they're slowly getting to understand each other and how they need each other in this world, especially because things are getting ever more sinister. I feel as though there's about to be a breaking point, that history, the wave of history is changing, and these long followed beliefs and structures are about to crumble. It's not enough to prevent the monsters that the wilder wood is keeping everything at bay. So yeah, there's a lot going on here, but I do like the chemistry between Red and the wolf. They are both very much misunderstood characters that are just trying to find their way in the world, in a world where their paths have been very much structured for them. I think that's a theme that all of these characters are experiencing, that they all have destinies, fates, prophecies that they're supposed to follow, and all of them are questioning it, saying this can't be the way the world is meant to be. It really can't. It's not satisfying, and it's unfair because none of us are performing roles that we want to do. So I am appreciating that, and I think that's very much fighting back against the whole fairy tale element, the fact that fairy tale retellings often are following the same structure. It's a bit ironic in a good way that these characters are fighting it. And there are a lot of differences and a lot more complexities to the original fairy tale narratives that Whitten is basing it off of. Also, this is part of a duology. I don't think I said that in my introduction. Apparently, Brittany actually prefers the second book over this one. She really did love this one. She really enjoyed it. But if she had to choose between the two, the second book is her favorite. So because I'm already kind of vibing with this one, I'm looking forward to getting to the end, hopefully still enjoying it so that I can read book 2 as well. Not in this vlog, unfortunately, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. There's a lot riding on this one because I am having a really good time. And at the moment, I'm enjoying it more than I enjoyed Inkblade Sister Scribe at this point. So, and that book was fine. Yeah, okay. Wish me luck. On the morning of Brittany's birthday, I finished For the Wolf, meaning I finished this vlog in the nick of time. I was right to choose this book as my last book for the vlog because it definitely was the one I liked the most. So right after I gave you my update for like the 100-page mark, there was a line that I think all of us readers can really appreciate, and this comes from like Red's perspective. It says, she would find her books and retreat to her room and try to numb her mind for a few hours before she had to think about any of this again. Honestly, we've all been there. We've been like, you know what? I need some time to just be away, to escape. And I was like, yeah, Red, of course we feel you. And this is obviously a Beauty and the Beast retelling, so it makes sense. I there were ups and downs, I'm not gonna lie. There were times when I did not care about the narrative, specifically Nev's perspective, Neve. I still don't know how to say her sister's name, because they were interludes, as the majority of the plot follows Red, her time in the Wildwood, as she tries to figure out her own abilities, what her relationship is to the forest, to Eamon the wolf, and just like, what is her purpose in all of this? Like, what has she been chosen for? What choice does she have? That's a huge theme in this, which I really like, along with like consent and paving your own path and making your own decisions without doing it blindly or being forced to do it. I really loved that throughout. But whenever we'd switch back to Neve, I appreciated the point of it. There were a lot of crucial moments, important information, laying down of the conflict within Neve's perspective. But at the same time, I just was like, oh my gosh, let's just get back to the wolves, can we please? I will say it's probably because Neve's POV, Neve's plotline, had a lot of predictability in it. I could easily see where everything was leading up to, and in certain genres and certain storylines, I like that. But with this one, I wanted a bit more subtlety. I wanted some more surprise, and I was like, here we go. Like, none of this is surprising. And I just kept being annoyed by Neve's decisions. Like, I didn't really relate to her, but I did relate to Red, and I related to Eamon and their own struggles. So I think that's why for this, it's always a gamble when authors provide multiple POVs or like dual POVs, because you want there to be a balance where you're invested in everyone, and that doesn't happen all the time. Like, there are so many books that I love where it's really like one or two perspectives that I was invested in, and the other ones I could take or leave. So it's kind of how I feel about Neve, even though I know how important her perspective was. And I think the way this ended, it's going to be so important, and I am intrigued as far as book 2. I think Neve might be our main character, along with her sister, but I think her story is the one that is going to be the most intriguing in book 2 for me. So as much as I could take or leave her here, I knew it was setting up for something that is going to be fascinating. I really loved the romance between Red and Eamon. I could see them both growing together, grieving together, because neither of them got to choose their destinies, but they were able to choose each other, which is just so cute. What I will say is, among the 3 books, this is the one I thought I was going to like the most. I think I've said that a few times in this vlog, so it's kind of nice that I'm able to predict for myself what I think I'm going to like. And yeah, so let's wrap this vlog up, and don't forget to wish Brittany a happy birthday, because she deserves everything. As this vlog comes to a close, we have to first and foremost thank Brittany Loves Reading for being born, because it's all thanks to her that myself and all of our other booktube friends decided to honor her in this way and just have a really good time reading a few books that she loved, helping you all get to know her a little bit better, her reading tastes. And I'm really glad, because Brittany is such a complex reader. She reads so many different things that if I were to do a Meet the Booktuber series just for her, an episode, as I'm doing right now, I know it's just scratching the surface. So I really do hope that you all check out the playlist linked below in the description, so that you can just really get to know Brittany in a better way, because my vlog is only scratching the surface. So just be sure to check her out. Be sure to go subscribe to her, because she's just a lovely person, and she's got so many plans for her channel. There are so many things happening behind the scenes that I'm partially aware of, that I know that if you subscribe to her, you're gonna have so much fun over there. So make sure you go do that. Wish her a happy birthday in any way you can, maybe on my video, on every single video that you see for our dedications to her in this vlog, because yeah, it's great. Anywho, the 3 books that I was assigned to read for Brittany include If We Were Villains, Inkblood Sister Scribe, and For the Wolf. So I don't think I mentioned the ratings that I gave for these books. I might have, but I'm going to repeat them anyway. So with the first book I read, If We Were Villains, I've decided to give it a 2-star. It wasn't for me. I think I had too many problems with the plot, with the character development, and I have debated about this more, which I didn't do on this vlog, so now I'm just going to summarize it for you. I think I like dark academia when it's mixed with some other popular genre. So dark academia fantasy, dark academia alternate history, dark academia mystery. And while this book, If We Were Villains, is labeled like thriller, mystery, it's not. It isn't. Yes, someone is dead and the characters are kind of wondering what happened. But if we're going to be honest, so many other things take precedence before that it's just, that's not what it is. Like, just because someone's murdered or dies mysteriously in a book, that doesn't automatically make it a mystery. And I think that's kind of a marketing issue. Like, I'm sure that when ML Rio was writing this book, the idea wasn't, oh, I'm going to write a murder mystery. The focus was, I'm going to write a dark academia book kind of as an homage to Shakespeare, and success, very successful in that. So I just don't think the marketing is right. But anywho, yeah, I think I need dark academia to give me a little bit more of another genre rather than it just being a bit contemporary fiction. That just isn't enough for me personally to be like reading a book with insufferable characters throughout. Like, I need something else to fascinate me, whether it's a magical system or, yeah, like an actual investigation, something to that effect. So it's 2 stars for me, but I assure you, almost every single person in this vlog project, if not all, are reading this specific book, and you're going to get every single view under the sun. So stay tuned if you haven't already seen some people's vlogs for that. I also ended up reading Inkblood Sister Scribe, as I mentioned, and for that one, I decided to give it a 3.75. I feel really good about that, and I think that's among the reasons why I'm doing quarter-star ratings, because I probably would have given it a 4 and felt all right about it, but there are certain elements that make the book almost feel not as special to me. Like, I think I could see myself kind of forgetting it a little bit, certain elements of the characters, not really remembering their storylines, but what I will remember is the blood magic system, and that was very well done. It was thorough. I totally understood what it was going on with it, how it worked, how the characters were involved with it, and that also, interestingly, there were a lot of themes that were similar between Inkblood Sister Scribe and For the Wolf, now that I'm thinking about it. Both of them involved blood magic, or at least magic that is ruled by or fueled by blood. That's very weird and interesting to think about. And both of them involved characters that were forced into scenarios, forced into paths that they could not choose themselves. They had to do it on their own, and they often felt isolated in the path they were being forced to take. Oh my gosh, are we seeing a theme? Are we learning about Brittany and some themes that she's really into? At face value, it sounds weird. She's into blood and lonely treks that are forced upon people. But that's, okay, Brittany, whatever you're into. That's so funny. Anywho, so with Inkblood Sister Scribe, I'm going to give that 3.75 because I also wonder if it's more leaning magical realism, and more I'm realizing magical realism might just not be for me, even though it's also deemed an urban fantasy, so it kind of blends the line between there, but I digress. So finally, we have For the Wolf, and this one's the freshest read. I actually just finished this morning, so I will admit that it may fluctuate. Like, I might not actually end on this because I'm in between a 3.75 up to a 4.25. The vibes and Red and Eamon's storyline are what's leaning towards a 4.25, but some of the kind of blurriness of the like magic system, of the fantastical elements and where the characters were, like, it was very choppy. Suddenly someone was in danger and you're like, what's going on? What are you doing? And then they'd save the person. I was like, wait, how did this person get in danger in the first place? And just stuff like that. And that could have been a me thing for sure. But yeah, I am also leaning towards this 3.75 range for those kind of things. And the fact that it wasn't half the book. Most of the book follows Red's POV, but there was a good amount where every few chapters we suddenly would be in the interlude and I'd be like, oh, why are we with Neve again? So that's why I'm in between there. The happy medium would of course just be giving it a 4 because I do think this is the best book for me, the one that I vibe with the most, so it should get the highest rating. So at minimum 3.75, but above Inkblood Sister Scribe, or at most 4.25. So still trying to decide on that. We'll see how it goes. Okay, we finished the vlog. I have no idea how long this ended up being. I hope it wasn't too long, but you know, your girl can chat. And of course, I love talking about Brittany. I love the idea of reading books that she recommends. So here we are. But thanks everyone for watching. I hope you had a good time, and I hope you continue to have a good time if you have more videos in this playlist to watch. If not, I hope I ended on a good note. And again, please, everyone, go reach out to Brittany in any different way you can, whether it's on Instagram, joining the Discord, or subscribing to her channel, commenting below, and wishing her a lovely, lovely birthday because she totally deserves it. So Anywho, I am grateful to be her friend. I am grateful to do so many collaboration projects with her and the other booktubers within this project, and I'm grateful to you for getting to the end of this video. So thanks everyone, I hope to see you in the next one. Bye!